Hi everyone, Anne O'Connell with OC Publishing here, and welcome to the author journey. Today we're going to go way back in time to the 14th century, and we're going to talk to author Jill MacLean about her newest novel, medieval historical fiction called The Arrows of Mercy, that very recently launched. And I'm going to tell you just a little bit about Jill before I bring her up to join me. Jill MacLean's 5 novels for middle graders and young adults won several awards and received numerous nominations, 4 of them international. Her poetry collection was shortlisted for 2 awards. Needing the new challenge of an adult audience, she delved into her abiding fascination with the medieval period. She was born in Berkshire, which is the setting for the Arrows of Mercy, and revisiting it in reality in the 21st century and in imagination in the 14th. Has given her much pleasure. She now lives in Nova Scotia near her family. I just want to also read to you one of the early reviewers' comments that's on the back of the book. Carol Bruno, who's an award-winning author herself, says, gripping, immersive, and penned with wisdom and a fiery presence. The Arrows of Mercy is a story of human desire that pushes the boundaries of language to make a powerful statement on the passions and impulses that shape morality itself, a story for the ages. And I couldn't agree more. I found it riveting. Historical fiction is one of my favorite genres. And boy, oh boy, this didn't disappoint. So let's bring Jill up to join me, and we'll delve right into it as you did into the 14th century. Welcome to the author journey, Jill.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you for having me here.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. And we were just talking, backstage about what an amazing launch you had just a couple weeks ago, and it was standing room only.
It was a grand event.
It was a great event, and all the book launches I go to, it really was like at the top of the tier for, like I said, standing room only. Lots of enthusiastic people, great readings, and even an actual archer, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And how did you find him? Like, where did he come from?
Well, it wasn't that easy. When I was doing the research way back in 2014, I
Mm-hmm.
was in touch with a man called Travis MacLeod, who was the head of Scotian bowmen. And he actually took me to the shooting range, and I was able to shoot a longbow because they
Wow.
use traditional bows, the big long wooden ones.
Right, we
Yeah,
just
a curved
pictured.
bow like that,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And he told me quite a bit about it, and he introduced me to a bowyer who makes bows, and I talked to him as well. So that was all wonderful. So then, when I was thinking about the launch, and somebody had said something about props, and I thought, props? What prop could I have? And then I thought of an archer. So I contacted, nothing like a person. I contacted Travis, but he was very involved. He's traveling quite a lot, and he has a family and the whole thing. So he said, why don't you try the Society for Creative Anachronism? There are quite a few archers in that. So by a very long way around, which involved me going up to Truro, where I met Kevin's wife, she texted Kevin, her husband, and he agreed to go. And so we connected by email. And then he came for coffee so we could talk it over. And I sort of explained, I gave him a copy of the book because he really wanted to read it beforehand. And I explained what I wanted, which wasn't a very long exposition, but 5, 7, 8 minutes, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And something to do with how Edmund, my character, would have fired a longbow. And then he said, would you like me to come in costume? Well, absolutely, I said.
No question.
So along comes Kevin, in his peasant costume with his longbow. Yes, I was just delighted he did that. Just
Oh, he
delighted.
was, and really, people were riveted, like
I think
from
we were.
from
Yeah.
beginning to end, and like I said, like I devoured this, and historical fiction is one of my favorite genres. So it was, wasn't a chore to read it, but it was truly um, immersive. Like you
Mm.
really were able to bring the reader, and of course I can only speak for myself, but I truly felt immersed in the Edmund's world. And it couldn't have been easy to create that. So, as I mentioned in your introduction, you've written middle grade and YA. And so this is quite a shift. So talk a little bit about how that shift happened and how you got into that mindset, because you really have to wrap your mind around a whole new world.
Okay. Well, very
That's
quickly,
a
how I
big
got into
question.
it. I'd written the 5 books for young readers, 3 middle grade, 2 YA. And I genuinely felt as if I was in danger of getting into a literary rut. 4 of
Mm-hmm.
them were about bullying overtly. 4 of them were set in Newfoundland. All of them were contemporary.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just thought, I need to change. I need to do something different. But
Mm-hmm.
what? And there was a hiatus, and it was pretty scary. I'd read about writer's block, but this was a kind of an inspiration block.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I don't really know how the medieval surfaced, but I've always loved it. I was able to go to the cloisters in New York City and Cluny in France, in Paris, and Chartres, that wonderful cathedral. And because I'm
Wow.
I'm British, I was born in Berkshire, where the book is set. I've often been back, and I've always been fascinated by old churches. So I've sat in many a Norman church, with the thick walls and the tiny windows,
Mm-hmm.
shaped almost like arrowheads themselves. And you feel the dust, and you feel for me, I felt the spirits of all those people who'd worshipped there for 700-800 years. And so
Wow.
I think that was part of what happened. And gradually, all right, once I get the inspiration for something, then there's what I call a brooding period. And it came really, like
Yes.
a hen on its eggs, cluck, cluck.
Percolating. Yeah.
And then, Edmund started to come to mind. I knew he was going to be an archer. I don't quite know why I knew that, but I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that war would play a part in it. I don't know if you want me to go off onto that or not. I don't have to. And so I started researching. And luckily, Dalhousie University has a really extensive medieval collection. And as an
Wow.
HRM library borrower, you can take all the books you want out of Dalhousie. It was wonderful.
Awesome.
So I started reading, and never have I been interested in aristocrats. This book, or really ever. So I knew I wanted to write about the lowest level of
Mm-hmm.
medieval society, which
Mm-hmm.
were the serfs, the villeins, the peasants, call them whatever you like. And they were the ones whose labor, unending labor, allowed the bishops to pray and the knights to fight. And
Mm-hmm.
I knew that was the level of society that I was interested in. So I then, of course, thought, well, where am I going to set this book? I mean, I can't believe this now, but for quite a while, I didn't have a clue. I was thinking, well, England's a big country. Where am I going to set it? And one day, it sort of, hit me on the head. Well, Berkshire, Jill, you were born there.
What a wonderful revelation.
Those things you sort of say, duh.
And what a great excuse to go back
Well,
home,
yes.
right?
Well, then I spoke to my son
Mm-hmm.
and said to him, thinking he would say no, would you like to come to England with me for 10 days, 2 weeks, and drive me around the back roads of Berkshire? Because I knew I was terrified to drive on the wrong side of the road.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been bad for the local population. He agreed. He agreed instantly. It
Wow.
was wonderful. So we did that. And, we went to London first and to a medieval village. But
Mm-hmm.
in Berkshire, in the southwest corner, I was actually born in the northeast, but in the southwest corner of the Kennet River, somehow I just knew that was where Edmund, I already knew his name.
Mm-hmm.
Names are so important. Edmund was going to live. And I took innumerable pictures and wandered and, let
Oh, I love
my
it.
imagination loose. So
Mm-hmm.
I came home with the setting. Um, and I did a lot of reading. I have a whole bookshelf of medieval stuff.
Wow.
But how I immersed myself, I think it was a long process.
It would be.
I think because I was so involved in the research, I made a big mistake, which is that I wrote this huge, sprawling novel. It was a mess. I had characters. I had so many characters you wouldn't believe, and they were doing things all over the map because I
So
wanted to
how
begin.
what was the word count of the first draft?
I think it was around 156,000,
Wow.
and the present book is 113.
Right. And that's still pretty long, but boy, oh boy, that must have been like killing your babies.
Well, it was. I had to kill a lot of your darlings.
Oh, what a shame. Yeah. But
But I
it's
think,
part of the process, right?
well, it is.
Mm.
And I knew all the time I was writing and revising that Edmund kind of walked with me. I mean, I'd go for a walk in my neighborhood in Bedford,
Mhm.
and I would see things that I knew he would see. I mean, the sky, the sun on
Mhm.
the lake or
Mhm.
on the water,
Mhm.
the little stream that goes down Moyer's Mill. He would see that in his river.
Mhm.
Um,
So
I
constantly
would
in
look
that
up in the sky
headspace.
and see
Yeah.
a plane, and I'd get a little jolt, and think, "Oh,
Yeah. Oh, wait. We're in the 21st century. Well, would you please read a passage for us
well,
and
I could do that."
bring all of our viewers into Edmund's world?
I'll just read the prologue,
Okay.
only a page and a half or so, not even
Yeah,
quite that.
that's
Um,
great.
the prologue, right. Dover, August 1348. The faraway coast of a country he never wants to set foot on again is hidden now by a stone granary. Edmund picks up his pace. He's behindhand, and if he's late, he'll miss supper, meager fare, the prior a clutch purse. He rushes around the corner into the shadow of a timbered house, sees the bulk of a man's back in his path, and runs full tilt into it, grunting at the impact. Hulking shoulders, thick neck, a pelt of dark hair. Bart? Here? Panic claws his throat. The man turns around, a stranger who stinks of sweat and piss-soaked hides. His red-rimmed eyes, startled, rest on Edmund's scarred face. You've been in the wars, sonny. Normandy, Edmund mutters, his heart rattling in his chest. Was you at Crecy? Edmund nods. Saved us from them Frenchies burning our houses and stealing our women, didn't you? God's blessing. He shambles down the lane towards the tannery at Stembrook. Edmund watches him, forgetting he's in a hurry. He was indeed one of the thousands of archers who slaughtered French knights on the slopes of Crecy, though he doubts he was as frightened then as an instant ago, waiting for Bart's rage to be unleashed for an ill-judged collision. 2 years since his conscription into the king's army, and him shrunk to a helpless little un in fear of a beating. Had it not been for Bart, wouldn't he have left the hospice at Maison Dieu months ago, as soon as he'd learned to walk again and his face had healed as much as it ever would? Walking faster, he leaves the shadow of the houses. A portent, he thinks fiercely. Past time he goes home to confront Bart. Bart, his brother. Brother or half-brother, what difference? He, Edmund, is a grown man, a seasoned soldier who learned many a dirty trick in the army and isn't afraid to use them. He'll be a match for Bart now. Home, a word sharp as verjuice. Home means home means Sir Roger de Molesley, Flintbourne's lord, who, depending on his humour, will charge him chevage for his long absence or throw him in the stone jail under the manor. Home means Mam, once widowed, once shamed, mother of 2 sons. Ralph, the ville's smith, who befriended a starveling boy. And, his pulse quickens, Juliana, whose name conjures the delicacy of primroses in spring. He'd begged her to wait for him before he left. Home means unrelenting work and constant worry about the weather. Home means walking beside the river, where swallows dart, willows dip and sway in the breeze, and the brown trout jump. Home means Bart, terror and tyrant of his boyhood.
Oh, let me tell you, that Bart boy, he just sends shivers down my spine. He's like the epitome of the bully big brother, right? But the characters are so um, beautifully developed. And I have to ask you, other than Edmund, who is your favorite character?
Oh, now. Agnes and Hawise, the two women characters, I think.
Mhm.
Each very different, but yes, each intrigued me.
Mhm.
For a while, I didn't know what was going to happen.
Oh, I love that. And Hawise is definitely my favorite.
Okay.
And what I liked best about her is she was probably the character that had the most growth and the most interesting arc in my opinion. I mean, she goes from this
Yeah.
scared, cowering little, you know, kitchen wench into this very confident woman who, starts to kind of call the shots, right? A little
Mhm.
bit. And I
Mhm.
mean, without no spoilers here. But like, where did the idea for her come from? And Agnes. I mean, she was a really strong female character as well. And Agnes being single and
Where did they come from?
yeah.
I don't know where Hawise's name came from, but it came to me one day and I thought, yes, that's it.
Oh wow.
Agnes the wise woman. I knew there would be a wise woman. A lot of the
Hmm.
villages had them, and some of them were filthy old crones and some of them were
Hmm.
not.
Hmm.
I think with Agnes, it became clear to me that, okay, I have to backtrack a minute. Edmund, when he was at the Siege of Calais, had been tutored by a squire in grammar, verse, and story. So Edmund, when he came home, spoke differently from everybody else in the
Hmm.
ville, which was another factor in his sense of self isolation.
Hmm.
Apart from his scarred face and the damages that war had done to him.
Hmm.
Um, so I think what evolved was I wanted a character, in this case female, who would be a match for him intellectually, possibly.
Hmm.
Um, and Agnes, being a gentlewoman, was the one. And I also don't want to give away any spoilers.
No,
So,
I was.
um,
Uh-huh.
Hawise, I wanted the connection with Bart because she was Bart and his wife's servant girl and much
Mhm, mhm,
used by both of them. And that was the kind of connectivity between Bart and Edmund, another source of dismay to him and
mhm.
servants.
What was the time frame from when you did your trip to
Mhm.
England and writing the last sentence of the first draft?
Oh my. I think the research took pretty well all of 2014.
Mhm,
The writing took 2015 to probably into 2016. So
mhm.
probably sometime in 2016. But the last sentence was not the sentence that's in this
It's
book.
in there now.
I would change
Well,
that
because
I don't think it's exaggerating to say 100 times. I cannot tell you how hard I worked on those last 20 pages. They just had to be right. And
yes.
for so long, anyway.
Well, you nailed it, in my opinion. So,
Thank you.
worth the
Thank you.
work. But boy, the pain and agony of shaving like 100, did you say 180,000 down to 113?
156. So
156,
it's
yeah.
history here.
Right. But that's a painstaking process. So,
Yes.
talk a little bit, and I know that it's, a very popular topic of conversation when I do workshops and is the whole editing process. And new writers are often um, startled by what happens after they think I'm finished now, and then it
Mhm.
goes into several rounds of editing. Like, what
Mhm.
was that process like for you? And
Yeah. Okay. Well, when um, I write 5 days a week.
mhm,
And the first thing, say work on Monday, then on Tuesday morning, I'll get up and I'll reread the however many pages it was I wrote on Tuesday and edit them. And
mm,
then that gets me back into the flow and I can keep going,
mhm,
and then do the same Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So there's a certain amount of editing goes on as I go along.
mhm.
Then when I finish, I usually try and put it away for minimally 2 or 3 weeks. Minimally. It should be longer, but it often isn't because I
Yeah,
want to get to it.
yeah.
And I sit and read the whole thing through and scribble all over it in pencil, the manuscript. I always print out a hard copy, by the way. I
Oh,
hate
wow.
copy. I'll have
Mhm,
to. I cannot
mhm.
edit
On
for
the
the first
screen.
time on the screen. I
Mhm,
need to have pages that I can flip and go back and forth quickly and mark
mhm.
up all that. So I read the whole thing through and try and figure out what needs to happen. Uh, Parts that I might like, parts that I think, ooh, not good,
Mhm.
and work on that. Um, I cannot write in chapters. I just can't. I know almost
Wow.
everybody else does, but I cannot. I write in scenes, and some scenes might be half a page, and
Uh-huh.
some scenes might be 15 pages, and it just has to take its flow. So another of the things I have to do in revision is go through this manuscript and try and divide it into chapters.
Find where the chapter breaks are.
It isn't easy at all.
Yeah.
In the case of Edmund, I gave it to a professional editor
Mhm,
here locally,
mhm,
and that was really helpful. And then I can't remember if I then sent it out. I might have sent it out then after doing revisions,
mhm.
but it was too soon. It was way too soon. Ooh, big mistake on my part. Um,
We live and learn, right?
we live and learn. I found writing an adult book for adults after
Mhm.
writing for middle grade and YA. There was a huge learning curve. I felt like I'd gone back to beginner's mind. Like I
Yeah.
didn't know the first thing. It was interesting and scary.
Mhm.
So eventually, after some rejections, I sent it to the literary consultancy in London. They have about 82 readers, and you can choose ones that you
Mhm.
will fit your genre. Um, and Michael Langan sent me a 12-page report, and
Wow.
I went through it. I think there was one small point of disagreement, and I did everything he suggested. I sent it out again, more rejections. I got him again, did another 12-page report.
Mhm.
I sent it out too soon, and that was what I did. I sent
Mm,
it out when it wasn't revised enough.
mm,
And I guess I would warn any writer not to do that because,
mm.
and then eventually I kept cutting back and cutting back, changing the ending. And I just sort of knew, I think I've found the essence of this story. I think I've distilled it to the point where I have to stop.
Mhm,
This is it. If I take out any more, I
mhm.
think I'll be doing damage.
Well, and I have to tell you that
That's it.
there was nowhere that the story dragged. There was nowhere that I felt there was too much background,
Mhm.
nowhere that there was too much explaining or historical, you know, lecturing, if you will, because
Nope, not.
I imagine with a bookshelf full of medieval research that there was a temptation to do that because you want to explain things. But
Absolutely.
in a novel, it's not a textbook. So in a novel,
Mm,
you want it to flow. You don't want it to get, bogged down with that kind of thing. So I really think that although it sounds as though the editing process might have been just a little painful, the outcome
mm.
was stellar. Um,
Thank
and
you.
I know I read in Anne Lamott's book Bird by Bird
Mm.
recently, and I know I'm a little behind the curve on that. It was the 25th anniversary edition,
So a
but she
wonderful
has
book.
it is a wonderful book, and it's one of the ones that will stay in my collection because I did lots of underlining in stars, and it will
Mhm.
be a reference for my next retreat. Um, but she has a whole chapter on writing groups. And I know
Mhm.
that you are a member of a very tight, very supportive writing group here. Tell me a little bit about the benefit of that to you.
Well, actually, I'm not
You
a
know, oh,
member
you're
really
not.
of
Oh,
writing.
okay.
When before my poetry collection came out, I was a member of a poetry group, and that was really
Okay.
wonderful.
Hmm.
Um, what I am, there's a group of women, we call ourselves the Abbey Girls, and we used to go up to the Abbey in the Trapstein Abbey in Rogersville, New Brunswick, and several
Okay.
of us were writers, and we would
That might
always,
have been what I was remembering.
yeah,
Yeah.
would write every morning and sometimes into the afternoon,
Hmm.
and go for walks and stuff. And in the evening, you had the opportunity to read. And most certainly, I read from Edmund during that time, and it
Hmm.
was encouraging. But I don't think I ever opened it up to to asking for
Too
exact
many.
feedback.
Okay.
So I was kind of on my own on this one.
Okay.
Generally, I don't like to show a manuscript to somebody before I feel it's done.
It's ready.
I'm not sure I recommend that.
Yeah.
I
It's
think if
interesting.
you hear people, you can get excellent feedback.
Yeah.
Sorry,
No,
interrupted.
no, and it's interesting because, what works for one person may not work for another, and,
Mhm.
I feel similarly to you, like, before, a manuscript is finished, I'm almost scared, to send a chapter or 2 because I've already got the momentum going. I don't wanna stall, you know?
Mhm.
Um, but by the same token, getting some early feedback can be really helpful if you're stuck. But if you're flowing, that can also sort of determine whether or not. So I have another very important question for you. With all of that research that you did and all
Yes.
of the material that you cut, um, and again, no spoilers, at the end, it was wonderful, but I just wanted to know more. Is there a part 2 that could potentially be in the works?
There is a sequel,
Yay.
in the works.
Good.
I started it last summer,
Mhm,
but then in October, I started dealing with, the self-publishing, so I had to put it
mhm.
away. I couldn't do the 2 of them at the same time.
No,
I
it's
need
a
a
lot of
clear
work.
head to write.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, so in June, I'm determined I'm going back to the sequel. I
Good,
have about 14,000 words,
good.
and it is about one of Edmund's children, his middle son,
Yes,
by name of
good.
Hawken.
Talking.
And, well, I think that's all I'm gonna say.
Okay, yeah, so we'll just
Edmund is
look
very
for.
much a character, and the relationship between Edmund and his son, I
Good.
think, is gonna be pivotal. I
Oh,
think.
excellent. Well, I'm
Yeah,
really, really happy to hear
finally
that. Yeah, that there is.
more.
So, Anna, you mentioned, you had sent the manuscript out and queried, and then eventually you decided to self-publish. So,
Mhm.
with a few minutes left, can you share sort of the comparison because your whole um, writing career, you've been traditionally published, correct?
Yes, yes.
And not only you've been an author for many years.
Mhm.
I was going to bring up and show some of the other books, but talk about the differences between the good and the bad and the ugly.
Well, for one thing, you pay money for it.
Right, right. That's the ugly.
Get that out of the way. I
Hmm.
think the main thing I'm finding now is that a traditional publisher, one hopes, puts the book into bookstores, or bookstores can order the book from the publisher. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, Tellwell does not sell books. They're not in the business of selling books.
Hmm.
So if I want the book to go into bookstores, guess who has to get it there? Now, libraries, I think, is generally speaking more the responsibility of the author anyway. And I'm
Hmm.
going to make a genuine effort to get it. I've got it in 4 libraries already, and I'm going to make a genuine effort to get it in libraries across the
Hmm.
country if I can. But
Hmm.
bookstores, I think, I don't, I don't know. That's to me a real
That's the big.
disadvantage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's hard. It is hard.
yeah.
But you also, I mean, the time frame um, is is probably, you wanted to get it out sooner.
Well,
Um,
yes. can I just say that to the
Yes.
people who are watching that I had approached Anne. She'd been recommended to me, but she is so busy, and this is a wonderful thing, that she felt my book wouldn't come out till some point in 2024.
That's
And I'm
right.
not as young as I used to be, and I just felt I couldn't wait.
Hmm.
And in a
And
way, I'm kind of glad that it's out now, and it's
I'm
out. I
thrilled.
can sequel.
Yes, I'm thrilled for you that it's out, but I'm like, it makes me very sad that it doesn't have an OC Publishing
I
logo on the
know.
back,
I
but
know.
it's okay. I want to champion and support, and I'm just
Well, I
really
appreciate
excited
that
that it's
very
out.
much, Anne. Thank you.
And you're very welcome. And Sue Slade has joined us and she says, sorry I'm late. She'll watch from the beginning. We're spotlighting Jill next week. Yes, yes. So
Hmm.
everybody check out Dartmouth Book Exchange. So
Hmm.
I can't believe we're already out of time. I wanted to also share some of the other books. I was really excited when you started talking about the re-release. I haven't read it yet, of The Nine Lives of
Yes.
Travis Keating. That was
Yes.
recent, right?
Yes, it's just about a month and a half ago, I found out it's gone into the Nova Scotia school system. And I mean,
Oh
it
my
was
goodness.
published in 2008, so
Hang on a second.
that's,
Let me
you
just
know,
see if I can. There it is.
there we are, 9 lives. Um,
Yes,
so that's wonderful because it's almost a whole new generation of children, not quite, but almost, will be reading it.
that's awesome.
And
So
that's,
you're
yeah,
just cooking. There's lots going on and lots of
yes,
excitement and
yep,
I'm again excited to know and maybe we will talk on the side about when you might be ready to publish that and
mhm,
if it might the timing might work for us. That would be really awesome.
all
Well, I can't
right.
believe that we're already at our half hour. I'm so excited to have had you join us today, and thank you so much for sharing the story of Edmund and the Arrows of Mercy. It's just been a
Thank you, Anne.
pleasure.
Thank
And
you so much.
you will come back, right?
I will.
Good. Thank you. So we'll say bye for now.
Bye-bye. Goodbye. Thank you for watching.
And thank you all for joining us this week on the author journey and learning more about Jill MacLean and her new book, The Arrows of Mercy, medieval historical fiction. Definitely, if you're a fan of historical fiction, pick up a copy. And if you haven't been drawn into that world, it might be a good one to start with as your first historical fiction. But for now, I will say goodbye and we'll look forward to seeing you again next week on the author journey. Have a great day.